Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. So we are now back in Utah. We went to Utah, I was invited to a conference, and then we went to general conference after that. And so we were there for a few days and the trip went pretty well. It wasn't as seamless and smooth as when we went to Kirtland in April of this year, especially the last part. And that's what I want to talk about. So I'm sorry that I didn't have a video for yesterday. The last few days have been kind of rough, but I'm getting back into the swing of things, and believe me, we're going to be looking at this general conference and dissecting it, especially President Nelson's talk, but others as well. There's just a lot to talk about. Okay, so but what I want to share with you here, this is a personal experience that I think has general principles that everyone can benefit from. And I don't know, I've had this very strange thing happen that also happened after Kirtland. So we were driving back, right? And we got a rental car because our cars are just old clunkers. And so I don't trust them to travel across the country. So we got a rental car and we were driving back. I was hoping that, you know, I could wake up early enough so that when we were getting back to Kansas, it would still be light. But it didn't work out that way. So we were driving back home, back in Kansas, and it was dark. But so whatever, I was being like as careful as possible. And we were about 25 minutes from home, but still kind of like in the middle of nowhere, because that's where I live, is in the middle of nowhere. I live in a small town. And I saw this raccoon, and it was in my lane. And then it saw the car and it started going to the left. Like it started just making a beeline, I thought, towards off the road. But then for some reason in its raccoon brain, it decided to come back into my lane, and my car hit the raccoon really hard, like really hard. Now, I've hit raccoons before. I've hit possums and armadillos and skunks and deer and everything else that lives out here. But I've never hit an animal. Well, okay, with the exception of deer, I've never hit one of these smaller animals as hard as this one. When it hit, it was a large thud, and it sounded very painful. And I hope that the raccoon went peacefully out of this life. And I think it did, because one time in Moab, I got knocked out because I was doing mountain biking, and you know, I got knocked out, and it was like a violent experience, but I got knocked out and I didn't experience anything. So I think when you have like traumatic things like that happen, I don't think you really experience it. So I think the raccoon actually was probably okay, even though it sounded horrible. Okay, so we hit the raccoon. I was like, oh geez, man. I hope it didn't cause like a dent, because, you know, we're probably gonna have to pay for that. We have full coverage on this car, but we have $1,000 deductible. And so whatever, kept driving. And then all of a sudden, like an alarm went off in the car. I was like, what? And then it said that the car was overheating. And sure enough, look up, and there was smoke coming out of the trunk, or oh my gosh, from underneath the hood. And so we pulled over, and it was really bad. I looked under the car, and there was a coolant leak. This raccoon, I hit it. It was big enough, and I hit it hard enough to where it somehow made a crack in the radiator, and coolant was just like pouring out. So we were in a place where there was like no reception, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is great. But it wasn't more than maybe about a minute before there were headlights coming from behind us. And this is like a dead road. It's dead. Like at this time in the morning, there was nobody traveling that road. But we saw some headlights, and guess who it was? Let me change the screen here. It was a tow truck. So this was of great comfort to me. He stopped. He was like, hey, you guys are okay? Do you need a tow? And we're like, yeah, we actually do need a tow. And he's like, well, I'm on my way to another job, but let's try and get this figured out. And the thing is, you guys, is that our cell phone coverage in this area is not very good at all. It's very, like, it's almost non-existent. And whoever he was using, his worked just fine. So that was Jenica. She was up there and she used his phone. We called the car rental place and ordered a tow truck. Well, I can't remember exactly who she talked to, but we had like roadside assistance as well. And so we made the call and everything. He's like, and then the car rental place is like, do you want us to set you up with an Uber? And we're like, if there is one out here, but yes. And so we made our calls, and then this guy took off. And I was kind of like, I was a little bit in a panic, but I was very comforted by the fact that out of all cars that stopped immediately after we broke down, it was this tow truck of all things. And by the way, we ended up being out there for probably about an hour to an hour and a half. And there were only like 2 other cars the entire time that passed by. Only 2. So the fact that it was a tow truck that stopped right after we broke down, for me, was kind of miraculous, even though he wasn't the one that towed us out of there. And so he left, and it was dark, and we had hardly any reception. And then we got the notification that no, there was no Uber. There was no Uber coming to get us out in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. Surprise. And so with the very little reception that we had, we were making calls. I did some Facebook posts to see if anybody in my ward, because like at this point we were now within ward boundaries, but like I said, still 25 minutes from home. And I was going through all the different scenarios in my head. Like, okay, am I going to have to possibly walk a few miles and get better reception, and then more reliably try and contact people? Are we going to have to wait? Because this was like 3:30 in the morning. And so I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to have to wait until like 6, 5 o'clock for more people to pass by and for traffic to pick up? And then maybe one of them will give us a ride home. Are we going to be able to get someone here before the tow truck comes? So just all these things. And it was just like a really awful feeling. And, but I've had like a lot of experience with this kind of thing lately. Just these like bad experiences, especially last year. If you've been watching my channel for a while, last year was a really bad year. There were a lot of things that happened. So much so that I was like, why is this happening this year? I kind of felt like I was being attacked by the adversary, and I think that's true, but I also think that it was a year to help toughen me up and to give me practice at like difficult situations. There were a few like big things, but most of it was just like lots and lots and lots of smaller things, but when all added together made for a bad year. And I've thought about it, and this year I feel like is like, if that was like the practice exam for me was 2023, I feel like 2024, there have been some things, including this, but that I've weathered it a lot better because of last year. And so my point with this is why this would be applicable to you is hopefully you can do the same thing. You know, if you've been going through a hard time, just realize that it could be to toughen you up for the future. And whenever you have similar things happen again, instead of like being like, oh, the bad luck or like the bad things that are happening to me, just be like, no, this may be like a final exam, or this may be, you know, my next exam. So now I know what to do. I know what not to do. I'm going to handle this time better. And that's exactly what happened here. So I had all these like fears and doubts like creeping in, but I prayed. The first thing that I did was I prayed, and it's almost like the prayer was already answered ahead of time, because this tow truck coming was really reassuring. It felt like Heavenly Father was already there. It's kind of like, I can't remember whose talk it was, but the speaker in General Conference said that whenever you get in a bad situation, Christ is already there. You may be alone with the exception of Christ. Like, he's already there. So it's like the Lord already knew that this was going to happen, and he had this guy like seemingly prepared for us. So I feel like I did really well. Situations like this can get kind of contentious, you know, because everybody's stressed. And so there was a little bit of that, but it was better than in times past. And eventually we did get a hold of somebody in town, and she was able to come pick us up. And then, later after that, the car got towed. So everything ended up okay. It was not the end of the world. Sometimes when you're in situations like this, your imagination gets the best of you and you think of all these like really bad scenarios. But it's really important just to stay calm and pray and also have faith. And I think that generally things will work out if that's Heavenly Father's plan for you. And it was in this case. So everyone was safe. And it was fine. And we were only there for, like I said, about an hour to an hour and a half. And so, yesterday, it was just a recovery day. So that's why I didn't put out any videos. Now, the interesting thing about it that I want to share with you is that this exact thing happened in April. So this here with this experience, this was October. It was after General Conference. Okay. It was after our trip. We broke down. Well, earlier this year, 6 months ago, we were in Kirtland, Ohio, for the Eclipse, and we watched General Conference. The Eclipse was the day after conference. It was a Monday. It was April 8th. And that trip was very, very smooth, and just, it was like the most perfect trip I've ever experienced, actually. And it was amazing. So what happened there is we got home, right? We turned the rental car in, and then I think it was about like 5 to 6 days later. Guess what? With the car that we've owned since we lived in Utah in 2011, that car, which had served us so well, it decided to break down after our trip to Kirtland, after General Conference. And the place that we broke down, I had enough reception to where I could do a live stream, and some of you were there to see it. And this is it right here. I'll put a link for it in the description box below. It's kind of poor video quality, but you may want to watch it. So we were on this, it was like the same thing almost. We broke down, and immediately behind us, like right after we broke down, there was a car that stopped, and the two guys that got out, they were mechanics. And they checked the car. They didn't see anything obviously wrong with it. They weren't able to fix anything, but they helped us get off to the side of the road. And just like this experience with the tow truck driver, he wasn't the one that actually towed us. Just like these mechanics weren't the ones that actually fixed the car. But we had this like reassurance of, if there was anybody that was going to help us right after, it would be these two types of people, a tow truck driver and mechanics. It gave reassurance. And let me just say something about that. I feel like that's kind of like, as we think about the second coming, we see these different signs that seem to mean anything, but nothing happens on that day. Or it's like, well, I mean, how much longer is it going to be? I think the Heavenly Father, he'll give us signs that it may not be right then and right there, that we're going to get what we're expecting, but it's pointing forward to the future. Because in the case of the tow truck driver, we did get towed. Everything was fine. And it was with his tow truck company that he worked for. And with the mechanics, well, in this case, the car was totaled because it was, the timing chain broke. So there was no fixing the car. But if there was going to be somebody that was going to fix the car, it'd be a mechanic. And it's just like, it was like Heavenly Father was speaking to us that everything is going to be okay. I'm going to send somebody that's relevant to your situation, but it's all going to be okay. And so this is like part of like, the pattern, I think, the way that the Lord gives us signs, whether it's for the second coming or just our personal life, that he'll send us something that's applicable to what we're thinking about, and to reassure us that everything's going according to plan and that you're being faithful. And that's why this is happening. So the thing about this story is we broke down, this is a less remote highway, but it's still kind of remote. And there's only one light, like there's only one street light on this entire stretch of road. And we happened to break down where the light was. And it felt like that was significant to us. Again, it made it more comfortable. It made it more reassuring. and the probability of breaking down here, the only place where there was a light, it just felt like the presence of the Lord was with us, that we were going to ultimately be safe. Now, this thing right here, pay attention to the shape of this object, because I wasn't able to get like a very clear picture of it in the live stream because, as you can see, it was sunset. But as a matter of fact, the day of Trump's assassination attempt in July, we passed by here. This is where we were. So this picture is taken in July, the day of his assassination attempt. And we were passing through here. We went the scenic route. After I found out about it, I wanted to go straight home, but we decided to take the slower route just because it was a nice evening. And there was all this like wildfire smoke. Well, it wasn't wildfire. It was like probably a farmer burning his field, but we never really see that in this area. And it was like really thick. The picture doesn't do it justice. Pictures don't do a good job at portraying smoke and fog and stuff like that. But it was so outstanding that I knew I had to take a picture of it because something significant had happened with Trump. You have this white tank that has Trump 2024. Before this, it had Trump 2020, but then they repainted it to do 2024. So that's a story for another day. But this is where we broke down. And everything I'm telling you, I'm not saying that this is like a sign for you. I'm just trying to share this experience in case you can relate this to yourselves. But it was really interesting. The only place where there was a light, and then the only place where you had like this Trump thing is where we broke down. And this is not a promotion for Trump or an endorsement or anything like that. What I feel like this could be for me personally is maybe a symbol of the elections, that when the elections come, things are probably going to go to yet a new phase of all the craziness that we've seen for the last several years. Things are probably going to get very interesting very fast. Remember, it was 2 years ago, November of 2022, that the nation experienced its first election day blood moon. There were national elections that year for like members of Congress, not presidential elections, but it was a blood moon that preceded. It was like the last national elections before the one that we're going to have this year. So, and it's been such a crazy year in so many other respects, but so the place that we broke down was here. And then the day that there was that assassination attempt, we drove here. We had all this crazy smoke from the field fires. I feel like I'm being pointed to the elections. Maybe it's on a personal level, but more likely it's a national and a global level, whatever happens with the elections. So anyway, and then, we got our tow truck, we have roadside assistance, and everything went really smoothly. The tow truck came, picked up our car. We found out later that it was, and then here's our ride right here. Someone from our ward who came to pick us up, and everything turned out okay. And I feel like that's the moral of the story, is that if you're striving to live righteously and you have faith and you're paying attention to signs, you're going to be okay. You're going to have reassurance, because signs can be, it doesn't just have to be, predicting the future. I feel like sometimes people, that's how they treat signs. It's like, oh, it's supposed to tell us what's going to happen in the future. And it can be, but it can also be for just reassurance and to let you know that God is there protecting you. And that's what I felt these two times. The fact that we had like this like sequel, we had the first one in April after General Conference, after going to Kirtland. Then we have this one. So Kirtland's to the east. And now here, October, 6 months later, the next General Conference. And this time we went to the west, to Utah, to these two very significant church sites. And then we have these two experiences in a row. I'm going to pay attention, and, it's going to be like a personal thing because this happened to me. But I just want to share it with you in case you find this of any benefit to you in the things that you've been experiencing. If you have things like this that repeat, you should really pay attention. You should. The Lord is trying to tell you something. So I don't know. Only time will tell. I don't know if this is a message for me and like the second coming. Maybe in the days ahead, things are going to get really crazy, and it's going to be like a bad situation. What if there's like food short? And I'm not a doom and gloom person, you know that. But what if there's like food shortages, or the power goes out, or something happens with the economy? You know, we can't get into that mindset that, oh my gosh, we're left to ourselves and we're going to have to figure this all out ourselves. No, you just do what you know you need to do. You prepare ahead of time, just like what we had the insurance, you know, we decided to get the roadside assurance, and then it turned out that we were fine. Just like you should have food storage and an emergency plan and 72-hour kits, but you don't have to think that you're all just like completely alone. You do what you can in a reasonable manner. And then that's it. And you do what you can without running faster than you have strength, and without getting into debt, because I guess there's some people that in their prepping, they get into debt. Don't be extreme. Avoid extremes. Just be moderate. Do what you need to do, and know that you're not alone. The Lord is there with you. So that's how I feel. I feel like me and Jenica, we have our food storage. We have 72-hour kits. We have this homestead where, if it comes down to it, we have property where we can raise animals and plant a garden, like a good sized garden and stuff like that. But I'm not going to act as though everything depends on my own efforts. It's not like that. The Lord wants us to depend on Him and do the best that we can. So, the fact that this happened twice, I'm really interested in what's going to happen next, what's going to happen later this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after that. But this has been a really, really crazy year. It's been crazy. Again, I don't mean to be a broken record, but I did a live stream at the end of June, because I like to do, it's kind of like becoming a tradition on my channel. I like to do these like half year reviews, and then maybe on like New Year's Eve, I'll do like a full year review and go over everything that I've noted. And when I did the one for June, I was like, this has already been a crazy year, and I think that the rest of the year is just going to be even crazier. And that turned out to be right. Things have gotten even crazier. And now here we are, you know, we're after General Conference, and we still have these last couple months of the year. And I'm going to make that same prediction. I think that it's probably going to get even crazier still. And it's simply because of like, I'm watching the trend line of all these events. Just the trend seems to be going that way. So, but it's okay. I don't have to get it right. I don't have to predict it. The more important thing is just to observe and see what actually happens, and then listen to the counsel of the prophets, apostles, general authorities, general officers of the church. And so in the next few days, I'm going to be digging into General Conference, and I'm sorry that I haven't been able to get out more General Conference content, but there's going to be so much to talk about. It's probably going to last us until the next General Conference, or until the second coming, if that happens before then. So, all right, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.